As I told you in the previous lecture, I will upload this map on my blog, so people can use it to study more about Nausicaa. Okay, now I want to move on to the opening sequence of Nausicaa. Yes, in today's free part, I would talk about the opening sequence of Nausicaa. The reason why Takahata panned it and about Whisper of the Heart, I'll talk about the first part of these topics. I'll start from the part after the pre-credit, which was a topic in the previous lecture. The pre-credit is a small drama part before the opening title of a movie. After Yupa's line, another village consumed in the toxic jungle, this text appears to describe the history explaining what has happened to mankind. Then, the opening sequence begins. The opening sequence tells us what happened. What happened before the world was consumed in the toxic jungle using a tapestry. The tapestry includes, here it is, this famous image, the one with the title. So, this is a watercolor painting drawn on a piece of cloth. This was actually drawn at the final stage of the production. Miyazaki, who has finished all of his work, drew it with watercolor paint. This was mentioned by directors Hideaki Anno and Ryoichi Katayama in the DVD audio commentary. They did for the Nausicaa DVD. Anno asked, so Miyazaki drew this at the end of the production? When he was done with his part of the job, Anno left the studio to go back to Osaka before the production was completed. So he didn't know that it was drawn by the director. Katayama replied that while we were busting our asses doing the final check and other works, Miyazaki, who was done with his job, seemed to have had a fun time drawing it. He was humming. Well, this Katayama's word sounds a little meaner than necessary, I thought. So, this is the first image in the opening sequence of Nausicaa, which Miyazaki is said to have had a fun time drawing. As I just mentioned before, he drew it after he finished all his work. This means that Miyazaki revisited the opening after completing the animation film. On the other hand, the same image in the storyboard was drawn before the production, and is slightly different. This is the same opening image of Nausicaa in the storyboard. It looks almost the same. The upper part represents the world of the Valley of the Wind, with the image of Nausicaa. The lower part has an image of Ouroboros, the two-headed snake, which is a symbol of Tolmekia. But it's slightly different in details. The difference is that in the lower symbol, tongues, which may look like the flame, are extending from both heads of this snake toward the sword, and the two images are contrasted by red and blue. It might seem like a minor difference, but actually it represents a huge change. The image in the storyboard was what Miyazaki planned it to be before the production. But when he drew the tapestry after the production, Miyazaki wanted it to be in this arrangement. He wanted the images of Nausicaa and Tolmekia to be reversed. This side has a woman drawn, so what it represents is obvious. So, Miyazaki wanted to highlight this side with the sword, which represents Kushana, the princess of Tolmekia. He wanted to emphasize that the story was about two characters, Kushana and Nausicaa. Unfortunately, Toshio Suzuki, the producer, was against this last-minute decision. He said that the title has the name Nausicaa, so let's stay focused on her. So, Miyazaki reluctantly had to go with the initial arrangement. So this is how Miyazaki actually wanted it. During the production of Nausicaa, he realized that the story was not only about Nausicaa, but also about the two women, Kushana and Nausicaa. In an interview after the film production, Miyazaki described them as two sides of the same coin. So he divided a single persona in two. This is quite a common practice in movies. Conflicting characters representing various sides of contradicting feeling of one person physically appear to speak the lines, externalizing the anguish of the person. When a person thinks, what shall I do? What should I do? It's hard for the audience to read it unless the character actually says it. So, various sides of the internal anguish of a person appear as respective characters to confront each other. And that's what makes a drama. Miyazaki was not aware that this applied to the two characters when he was making the storyboard, so he was simply drawing symbols. He strongly realized it when he was drawing the tapestry as a final touch in the film production. The presence of Kushana grew bigger and bigger inside him. Then he realized that it was actually about two princesses who are on different sides, Valley of the Wind and Tomekia, but sharing the same anguish. I'll go into this further in the second half. As you can see in this example, people often wonder what the creator was thinking when they see their work, but sometimes that's just meaningless. This is because Miyazaki himself, when asked questions such as, "What motivated you to make this film? What are you trying to say in this film?" often answers, "I don't know, that's why I had to work hard." So he drew the storyboard without really being sure where he was going. He was drawing the tapestry after the film production was completed, and that's when he realized that he wanted to make the story about Nausicaa and Kushana. So he tried to flip the images upside down. In this manner, sometimes the creator figures out the theme of the movie while they are making it. So this was the first cut in the opening sequence, which shows the title. You can see that the margins no longer have pigs of prosperity or swords. Instead, they are now filled with graphic images of skeletons buried in the ground. So all hell breaks loose. You can see the giant warrior spitting fire and people falling from buildings. These buildings are also actually several thousand meters high, like those we already saw. They're all burned down and the world is collapsing. This layout of the giant warrior resembles Hokusai's print of a giant skeleton titled Gasha Dokuro, but facing the opposite direction. I also feel a slight essence of South American paintings from this layout. This margin, which here insinuates an enormous number of deaths, is quite interesting. And the subsequent scene shows, here it is. It shows the actual giant warriors. This is one good way of transitioning between the scenes. I mean, it will be a bumpy transition if just you jump directly to the animation part from the tapestry. So what Miyazaki did was, he slid in a partially enlarged view after the tapestry image. This transition between cuts is an extremely instinctive sense of virtuosity. I can't imagine someone other than Miyazaki pulling off such a trick. When this scene comes along, Ano in the audio commentary says, "This opening sequence is so well made." He is praising the virtuosity in this transition between cuts. This scene is briefly succeeded by the enlarged view of the creature's head, and then the actual moving giant warriors appear. So you can easily follow the transition. If you just simply jump from tapestry to animation, it would seem quite odd and inconsistent. But if you slip in this single cut of enlarged view, the audience can have time to imagine what the warriors are watching, the world of apocalypse, and then suddenly you see this scene. The 1,000-meter buildings collapsing, and objects so big are standing. And they are colossal. In this tapestry, you see the eye of the giant warrior, and this smoothly guides your attention to their eyes, which are the only things glowing in this screen. I mean, one of the glowing things, including their spears. This kind of transition is not something you can learn. Theoretical type of anime directors can't do this. It's really an impulsive flash of genius. That's why Ano doing the audio commentary is saying, "So well made."